and welcome to What's Next. My guest today is one of my favorite people in the world and one of my best friends, and the first person who ever made me laugh chocolate milk through my nose with fries. I think I had fries in my mouth too. Geoff Tate is my guest today.
You had French fries in your mouth and chocolate milk came through your nose. Was this like a school lunch?
Yes, we did a really great show at an elementary school.
For lunch. We did it so we could get free lunch.
Yeah, we paid them $2 in a shirt and we got a free lunch. But yeah, no, you were still like one of the funniest people I know, and I'm super excited to have you as a guest on my podcast. So thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I can't believe how early it is for you.
It's so early. When I was like, we were like talking times and stuff, and I was like, you were like, well, how about the morning 8 or 9? I was like, that's perfectly, I'd love that. But I mean, I get up early all week. It's just that Saturday is usually my day to like catch up on sleep that I didn't get because I get up early with the kids for school.
Right.
But it's all right. It's all right. Anything to see your beautiful face.
And you seem more awake than me. And I'm not even stoned.
You're just sleepy because you stayed up till 2 5 nights ago. So
yeah, 5 nights ago. I'm still recovering. And it was for real party reasons. I was reading a book.
Yeah,
I was wrapped up in my book.
That's a good reason. The only time I stay awake now is if I'm stressed out. If I just am laying there like running the numbers and being like, oh, what's going to happen to democracy? It's the only reason I stay up past like 1 now.
So it's every night?
Yeah, it's fairly... I take melatonin now, which is funny because of all the drugs I've done in my life, melatonin fucks me up more. Like, melatonin, I take a melatonin and a half hour later, I'm like, well, like, you can't talk to me. It literally knocks me out.
That's amazing. I take these over-the-counter Kroger brand sleepers, and it's about the same. A half hour after I take it, I could just like click, turn off the light, and then I'm asleep for 7 hours solid.
Yeah, that's if I don't sleep for 8 hours with the melatonin, I'm a wreck the next day. Like the kind of wreck it used to be when you'd like drink till 7 in the morning and then go to work at 8. Like that's how much of it. If I take one melatonin at 11 instead of 10, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna throw up. It's so embarrassing.
You look like you're massively hungover, and you're like, I took my regular sleeping pills, and then I got up a little early, a half hour before usual.
I had a little candy before bed. Now I can't function all day.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I've had since I quit smoking, I can like remember my dreams now, and every single one of them is wild.
Really?
I think I texted you about one. There was one that where we were on the road, and then you were driving our rental car, and you drove it off a bridge onto like a flotilla of Trump boats.
Oh my God. That's right. You did text me that.
It was the most amazing moment of a dream. I woke up and I was disappointed that, like, of all the dreams I've had, that was the one where I was like, that was the best one. And then you were like, because it was like cops and it was somewhere with a bunch of Trump people, you were just like, I am a girl. I don't know how rental cars work. And they all bought it. And so we didn't get in any trouble at all. Just like, what do you expect? I'm a woman. Of course I would drive into a lake. I'm not
usually the one driving. Yeah. I would for sure milk that.
And it totally worked because they're all dipshits. And even the people whose boats you sank weren't mad at you.
That's like, I love that you're remembering your dreams, because even when we were touring, I remember you just kind of didn't dream. Well, but also you're a rough sleeper. Are you still doing sleep apnea and teeth grinding quite a bit?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it's as bad.
I wonder because since you quit smoking, it probably helped it a lot.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of there's nobody around to tell me.
Oh. Well, you should set up a little recording device so that in the nights where I'm not sleeping, I can lay in and listen to you grind your teeth.
Oh yeah, will that help? Will that help? Yeah, I don't know if I still do the teeth grindy thing. I might. I don't know.
One of my favorite moments was when we were with Kanane. I don't know where we would have been. And he was like, how you liking, I got to do the voice, how you liking touring with Geoff? And I was like, oh, it's great. We're having such a blast. And he was like, but the sleeping? And I was like, sleeping, he snores. And he was like, no, I'm talking about the teeth thing. It's like, it's like you're taking 2 sheets of, what's the metal corrugated stuff you put on roofs?
I don't know.
Wow.
I would never know that.
He knew. I knew at the time. Well, that stuff, he was like, it's like taking 2 of those metal sheets and just dragging them across each other. But then also every once in a while waking up and going, what's that? I was like, it's you, man. It's you.
It's funny because it's whenever I, like that happens every time I share a room with somebody. And then they're like, so it must just be like we switch off who's asleep because it's not like Kyle is fucking seamless.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got a little of all that going on.
Yeah.
But not not to this extent. Like this is like people next door should be calling.
Yeah. God gave you a gift.
Yeah. And it is to somehow sleep through that.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Well, let's get into it. Did I prep you with the first question that I ask? I ask everybody 2 questions, and then I have a personal question for you. That's just something I'm like thinking about and want to know what you think about, and then we do like a seasonal question. So did I prep you for the first question? I can't remember.
Well, run it by me. Let's see.
Okay. So what is the closest you've ever come to dying?
Yeah. Okay. You did prep me for this, and I can't. Like, weirdly, I think there are 2 times that I really thought I was going to die. And one is a fast story and one is like an actual story. But there was one time on the Jersey Turnpike, I was driving from Philadelphia to New York. And like all of a sudden all the traffic stops. And then in my rearview mirror, I see a truck is just barreling towards me and then has to swerve like into the right lane and like go all the way onto the shoulder to like, and it just missed hitting the back of my car.
Wow.
And that is like that's what happened to Tracy Morgan.
Yeah.
So like that was close. And then I fucking hated the rest of that day. And so that's like the least fun way I almost died. And then the most fun way I almost died was I was like 20 years old or whatever. They just put a new ride in at Kings Island. And I've been riding roller coasters since we moved to Ohio. We first moved right next to Kings Island. I got a season pass. And so, but the first like upside down roller coaster I rode on, I was like 13. And then 8 years later, they put another one in, and it was the first one I rode on that like hung down and the track was above you. And it was really new. And I was on drugs. I had eaten acid, and then
oh my God,
we were waiting in line, and it was every roller coaster goes up the hill and then down into the ride, but this one goes up the hill and stops, and then it's like a slingshot, and you go back down the hill and out into the ride.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't know that that's what happened, and there had been several. Like I had been on roller coasters that got stuck on the hill. A couple of times and then you're just trapped there for a while until they can get their fucking coaster to work again. And so then when this one stops at the top of the hill, I thought that's what had happened, was that we were stuck. And I was like, fuck, I'm on this thing. I'm hanging. Like it's in like a harness thing with a bicycle seat, but your feet are just dangling. And I was like, my first thought was that we were trapped just on the hill, going up the hill. But then when it released and went back down the hill, I thought it broke. And then we were about to crash into another car at some point. And so all the way down that hill, I thought that the best case would be like I break both my shoulders and my chest plate. And I'm gonna have to like try to like hold all my organs in until the hospital can get me. And that's what I thought was best case, and that for sure I would just get fucking, that we were all just gonna get destroyed, because it's not like nobody has died at Kings Island. And then when we went past all the people waiting, and that was when I realized we didn't hit another car, and that's where the ride was. It then became the most fun roller coaster that I had ever been on, because it was the only one that was actually scary.
Yeah. But you were on acid when this happened. Yeah. Oh my God. That
whole probably story, heightened it.
That made my like chest tighten up, and I was just like, just the idea of being on acid on a roller coaster anyway is like, no. That's definitely not what I would do with my acid trip. Like, I just want to be in a very quiet place alone, with someone in the, like, maybe 4 rooms down, checking on me every so once in a while and making sure I'm okay. Like, you know, candles and some soft music, some Enya and a bath, maybe. That's what I would do. So the idea of going on a roller coaster, but then just like picturing you being at the top and then having that like sucked back, like I feel like that would be not like spiritually upsetting. Like, oh
yeah, the people that were, because they also, not only was it a backwards thing, but I got on the car to ride the coaster backwards. Like I thought, so it was like the 4 seats would face each other.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that I was going to ride the coaster backwards, and I thought that would be like just incredibly scary and fun and exhilarating. But because I was backwards, then we went into the ride, I was going forwards.
Oh.
And so the people on the other side who were looking right at me, they said that they had never seen anyone look as scared.
Were you screaming or were you silent?
Oh, I don't remember, but I imagine I was screaming.
Because that's one of those situations, like I've been in situations like that where I thought I was screaming and then people were like, no, you were completely silent. So I was just screaming in my own head.
I probably couldn't stop laughing as soon as I realized we weren't dead. As soon as I realized we weren't going to die, I probably laughed the rest of the time on the ride. Because that's what I do when I can't get rid of, when there's like too much tension. Yeah. I did it. There was like towards the end of when we saw It, Chapter 1, there was like a part near the end where I just couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because anything was funny. It was just, it had been too much.
Yeah. That movie, I saw that with like a whole bunch of comedians. We saw it together. And I can't remember. I was sitting next to you and maybe Dave Ross or somebody, but I remember I kept getting dirty looks from either you or him because I was just laughing through the whole movie. Because from the beginning, I was like, I'm scared of everything but clowns, apparently. Like, clowns, I was like, this is ridiculous. This is not scary at all. This is absurd. And everybody kept glaring at me because I just, like, in, like, scary parts just started cracking up and being like, come on. But I didn't realize I was like, this is so not scary. A clown is not. Even a murdering clown.
Had you read the book?
Yeah, I read the books. I actually read that book when I was 10, which is way too young to have read that book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I loved Stephen King as a kid, and I read everything by him. And I had read it, and I'd reread it a few times as an adult, too. It's a great book, you know. It's a pretty spooky book with kind of an odd ending, obviously. Like, well, all these kids better fuck, but...
Well, there's no... What Stephen King... Like, I bet it's like, how many Stephen King books have great endings? Isn't that the thing with Stephen King? Yeah. It's like 90% of it is amazing, and then the end is like, well, I guess this is where it's over.
Yeah. Cujo has a good ending, and that's literally the only one I can think of.
Well, he famously doesn't know the end.
Yeah.
Like he knows the story, and then he starts writing the story, and that's why the story is always generally pretty good.
Yeah.
Because that's what he's worked on, but he doesn't work out the details, and he doesn't work out the ending. He lets the story resolve itself. And so they all, like, none of them are good.
That's how I feel like I write, except for, like, I'm a really strong starter. I'm really good at beginning a story and getting real into it. And then in the middle, I start to kind of lose interest. And then I'm like... You know, it doesn't matter. Never mind. And then I start a new story and I'm like, this is the one. This is it, baby. And then I never have finished anything ever in my whole life. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. All of my, even the ones I do on stage, don't really like strong starts, lots of tags, lots of jokes, and then the end, it's just over. It's just like,
Yeah.
and then I survived.
Yeah, and people are like, "Well, what was the punchline?" You're like, "No, I don't really do those. I'm a thick middle is what I
Yeah,
am."
what do you mean? What's the punchline? There was like 50.
Yeah.
No, like the end punchline. Oh no, it's over when I stop doing it.
Yeah. Many of my jokes end with, "All right, well, that's enough of that."
Yeah. I can make it longer. Would you like that? I can't come up with an ending, but I can add 4 more minutes to the middle.
I was thinking, I made hush puppies the other night. So you'll love this. Out of the blue, Henry, who has always been the kid who will eat anything. He's like a little garbage disposal. Henry all of a sudden became very picky like 6 months ago. And the thing he's most picky about is onions. He will not eat anything with onions in it. Even chili, if it has onions in it, no, like nothing. He will not eat anything. And I'm like, is this some sort of, did you talk to Geoff? Did he pay you for this? And he's gotten super picky. So I made hush puppies the other night. And the trick to a good hush puppy is you have to put in onions. Like otherwise they get too dry. And the onions are what keep them. I guess you could use like applesauce or something, but you mince them really, really fine. So you can't actually like their texture isn't there. They're like a mush that you put in. So I put him in there and he ate like 8 of them. And he was like, these are amazing. These are amazing. And I finally was like, well, they have onions in them. And he spit it out onto his plate. And he was like, these are disgusting. I don't like these. These are so gross. And I was like, God.
Well, he'll learn. I mean, there's no way I could take a bite of it without knowing.
No, you wouldn't have, I couldn't have snuck them past you.
I mean, it might just be, honestly, this just sounds like somebody who wants to have some control over something. And
Yeah.
when you think back to what happened 6 months ago, his like, if we think our lives are different, like his is over.
Yeah.
Like there's no, school was the one place where you didn't have to be in charge of anybody.
Yeah. Like it's funny because I think that every once in a while it'll hit me where I'm like, this is my kid's childhood. This is it. Like Calvin right now, Calvin and Henry both just got their driver's permits. They should be like, super excited about independence and going places and having a car and doing all this stuff. And like, instead they're, doing online school and they're allowed to like hang out with friends at the park or have somebody over to the backyard or whatever. But it's like very, it's very limited. And they've mostly been pretty good. But every once in a while, one of them will just have a total meltdown and just be like, so mad at me because I'm here and I'm somebody to be like, you fucking, this whole thing is your fault, and I'll be like,
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know you guys, I'm frustrated too, I'm sorry, but it's like, this is my 40s, so who gives a fuck, but this is their child.
Yeah. Oh man. I was thinking of how much I would have liked this when I was like, as far as the summer goes, like this would have been an amazing summer for me because it would have eliminated church camp. And that was like, I'll give up the rest of everything of summer the summer has to offer to not have to go to church camp.
Yeah. Did you go every year?
Every year until I got a job.
Wow.
So 14, the summer I was 14 was the last summer I went on one.
Was it all summer or a week or how long was it?
It was like a week. Maybe one of them was 2 weeks. But it's just, I mean, it's the fucking worst. It's fucking terrible.
That's funny. I have some friends who like, even though they hated church and they hated their religion, they always had fun at church camp. But you went to probably a Pentecostal church camp? Or?
Well, those people were probably like people who were like if they were like cool or popular people in school, then they were at church camp too. And church camp, like if you're not that, then church camp is just, there's no relief from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
It's and there's always fucking it was because it was because of kids like that I hated it probably.
Yeah.
Like kids that weren't really like church people. Cause like I would go with my friends and then the rest of the time is just trying to avoid everybody else, but there's no going home from it.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, the joke I have this joke on stage where the church camp is like summer camp, except they take all the fun of summer camp and replace it with church, and then take all the fun of church and replace that with camping. So it's a literal worst of both worlds. There's no air conditioning and you never get to go home, and those are the two best parts of church. And the best parts of camping is that there's no that there's like less rules or whatever, but now you're camping and there's as many rules as there are at church. Church is the place with the most rules. But I wouldn't have had to go. Although there is a chance that it's hard to remember how, because my dad was so obstinate towards the end, the last 20 years, that it's hard to remember to think about how would he have reacted if I was 15 and this was happening. Because what I think of is if I was 15 and I got to put his perspective from 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what I know what it would have been now. Now, if he was still alive, we would all have COVID and both my parents would be dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
He would have refused to wear a mask. He would have gone to O'Charlie's every fucking night, just more than usual, but just to show that he wasn't under the fucking left's control or whatever, some dumb shit like that. Because Dinesh D'Souza told him it wasn't a big deal. But I don't actually think that's what he was like 25 years ago. I think he was a little more, it sounds crazy but he was more open-minded back then. There was more of a chance that he would have been well, I'm not getting sick.
Yeah.
I'm not, this is a guy that in the 80s was don't use payphones because he didn't know, because there was some C. Everett Koop thing that was we don't know where AIDS comes from. So maybe you get it from a toilet seat or a payphone or whatever. Then they had to they eventually sorted that out. But this is just a thing. And I don't know that he would have been, but I also don't know that it would have been, it's not only his point of view, but it's the country in general. Would this have been as bad then? Because they had to take steps in 2003 or whatever when George Bush was president. They did stuff. It wasn't political to try to not get SARS.
Yeah.
They weren't just going just because it came from China doesn't mean it still won't kill you. So whatever. But the Republicans have turned into, as long they've just become a party of, we'll give you someone to blame. We don't have any solutions ourselves. That's not what we do. We just show you who to point the finger at. And in this situation, people are fucking dead because of it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't what it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's interesting to think what would your dad be like without Fox News? The country. What would the country be like? Yeah, your dad was an obstinate, prick.
I think about it because there's documents. So we lived in Weezer. I remember my dad wrote a thing for the Weezer newspaper about about why prayer was kept out of schools. It wasn't an op-ed that was we need to have prayer in school. It was, here's why it isn't, because this is a public thing, and when people say they want prayer in school, it's to a specific God. They don't want prayer. They don't want just across the board prayer. If they put prayer in school and then someone threw down a mat and faced east, they would lose their fucking minds over it. Mm-hmm. That's not what they mean. And so he wrote this thing, and it was in the paper when I was 10 years old about that. And that's a pretty, I guess it's a little astute. It's certainly more than he was after Fox News came out. Mm-hmm. It's certainly more than he was after Rush Limbaugh was on the radio every day.
I'm very surprised he wrote that,
Yeah, it's wildly out of character for what he became. But that was after 25 years of Fox News and Rush Limbaugh. And that kind of nonsense where they just disregard any sort of fact and only go with feeling. It's so you know how hilarious it is that Donald Trump plays Fortunate Son at his rallies? It's the perfect song for him to play. Because like when he starts a rally with Fortunate Son, he is starting the rally by telling all of those people to disregard the words they hear and only act on how it makes them feel. And then that's what the whole rally is. And that's what the whole Trump presidency is. It's to disregard the words that are said. And Fortunate Son, there's no better song to get people ready to not pay attention to what's being said and only think about how it makes them feel than Fortunate Son.
Yeah. And YMCA is kind of the same. Like I've been watching all the videos of them dancing to that, and it's like, this is just because it's like a lowest common denominator song where you only have to know the chorus and what to do with your arms. And it's just one of those, like, it's almost like the ABCs, you know, where like everybody can do it together. And then it's kind of like, okay, we're a group. We've bonded.
Yeah. And it's, you know, and that's like YMCA is even more of, it's like one step further of like, not only do you disregard what's being said, you have to disregard who's doing it, like who's doing the talking, because that like they're against everything that group stood for. I mean, they're against everything that the fucking YMCA stood for. Yeah.
Yeah. Those guys have made sure that the YMCAs have gone out of business, or, you know, like, are gone in a lot of cities and towns. Oh.
Anything that's any form of like public funding that isn't designed to separate doesn't get funded. So like schools don't get funded, but the cops do, the army does, the firefighters do, the roads do, but only in some neighborhoods. Like, it's
same
just
with the firefighters, you know, they're privatizing that shit.
They just to make sure. So like whenever they talk about socialism, but it's only socialism that levels the field. It's not socialism that keeps it separate. Like, that socialism is fine. Because what goes into keeping the military and the police, that protects the rich people, but giving kids a place to go to exercise and a place to go to read and a place to go to learn, fuck them. If they wanted to do that, they'd be rich.
Yeah. It's funny. So now that your dad's gone, is your mom still watching Fox News? Is she still like on that? No, she would
just Facebook.
Just Facebook. Is she?
So I don't know that it's better, but it's at least not.
Yeah.
Out loud.
Yeah. Is she being careful? Is she like taking it seriously? Good. I'm glad. I love your mama.
Yeah. Me too. It's very. This has not been easy because like it's she's only been free of the old man and the job for a little while, and then the second year that's true, there's nothing to do and nowhere to go.
Yeah, I know. I had hoped after your dad passed and she was able to retire that she would like do something wild, like, well, guess what? I'm going to France. You know, like,
but she was going on a cruise that didn't leave until March 21st of this year. So like that got rescheduled for next November.
Oh,
and fingers crossed. There'll be cruises then.
We'll see. Yeah. I think it depends a lot on Tuesday. We'll see. That's one thing, like you can't really plan for anything right now as a comedian because you're like, I don't know. Either I'll be touring again possibly in 6 to 8 months, or maybe not for 2 years, or maybe I'll be in a camp. It's hard to say.
Right. That's why I've been hiking. I joke that it's because I think we're going to live in the woods, but I only say that I joke because the people I say it to don't think it's funny.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. I'm not. There's a non-zero chance of that now. Like, there's like, it's not a high probability. It's not even like, it might not even be like a quantifiable number, but it's definitely not zero anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's not zero that there's a civil war. It's not zero that there's, insurrection. It's not zero that there's going to be an attempted coup in the next fucking 1 month.
Yeah.
These things used to be zero.
Yeah.
But now they're just not zero. Like,
it's weird because like it used to be people like your dad and the people who were listening to Rush Limbaugh, they're like, Obamas, they're coming for your guns. And they had all these conspiracy theories. And on the other side, you were able to be like, there's a 0% chance of that. That's never happening. And now we're like on the other side and we're like, there could be a coup. And I'm like, sometimes every once in a while, I'll kind of be like, did we just flip? And now we're the ones who are paranoid and out of our mind. But then you actually pay attention and do any sort of the math and you're like, no, it's weird. It's dangerous. It's
right. That's what, I mean, honestly, isn't that what abusers want you to think?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
They say crazy shit and you go, that's crazy. And then they keep it up until you're like, wait a second. And then now you're the one and then you're like, but this is real. Like, I'm like, this is legitimate.
Yeah.
Like there could be, like, it's not crazy to think that. You know how I know it? Because the fucking guy who's going to do it has said he's going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that keeps it from being 100% is I'm not positive that everybody else that has to go along with it will go along with it.
Yeah. It's a funny, like, I think both of us have our experience with narcissists in our life gives you a weird perspective on Trump and on the whole movement because it's funny to watch it take 4 years for a lot of journalists and a lot of people to realize, like, a narcissist is always telling you what they're going to do. And then when you're like, he said he's going to murder me. They're like, I never said that. I never said I was going to murder you. And like, no, I have it on tape. And like, you can't argue with a narcissist, you know?
And then people you play that tape for go, oh, they're just venting. You know, they're not really, like, no one would say they're going to murder you and then murder you. And you're like, but what are you talking about? People do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And people don't want to believe, like, malignant narcissists are such terrible evil that I think people who have never dealt with that don't want to believe that can be a real thing. So,
well, every girl that's ever been murdered by an ex, everybody else that's fucking shocked by it, I can tell you the one person who wasn't surprised, and that's the girl.
Yeah.
The girl knew it was going to happen, and no one fucking believed her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes not even the girl, because I know, like, you'll be like, I feel like this person's going to murder me. And they're like, I'm not, but I might. And you'll be like, he's not going to murder me. He loves me. You know, like, narcissists are also really good at making you love them because they're often really, like, charming. Watching Trump speak, I always think how similar he is to my biological father in that he can talk to you for a half hour. And when you leave, you're just like in this fog of like, what? What did we say? What happened? Because he talks you into these like spirals and circles. And anytime you try to like nail anything down and be like, no, what about this? He's just like got you. And like, it's like a way of talking that almost like moves you from prefrontal cortex into amygdala, you know? So that by the time you leave, you're just fight or flight and you're like, oh, what happened? What happened? You know?
There was that book I read, Narcissist Next Door. Mm-hmm. The book that like 100% explained my dad. It was written in like the 2000s, so it's not new. The first like 3 or 4 chapters used Trump as an example.
Wow.
And so I read all of that, and I was like, oh man, this guy is just like he's like the rich version of my dad, where he's just like, as long as you feed into it, mm-hmm. you will be on his good list. Like, I get, like, because of where I ended up in life, I have like less than 0 respect for his children, but I do have empathy. Mm-hmm. I don't respect the fact that none of them have the courage to be like, what the fuck? Because you should be able to do that.
That's the money, you know, like it was easier for us to walk away from our dads because they were broke. You know what I mean? But if they had billions of dollars and had been always like pulling you back in with this, like this promise of wealth. And like, because rich people can't imagine living poor, you know what I mean? Like, so they're like, well, we'll take away the money. And that's the worst thing you can do to a rich person is take away the money. So of course they're always going to go back to the abuser. Whereas we at least were able to be like, well, you have literally nothing I need.
That's a good point. But I still don't I understand why they're where they're at.
Yeah.
But I don't respect it because they're there for money. And it turns out there isn't even money.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Yeah.
There's just like, there's enough of an illusion of it that they get to still do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you know, It's a funny, like sometimes you'll occasionally see someone who is interviewing him, like the woman who did his town hall, I thought did really well, and the guy from Axios, he did really well. And it's like those people have dealt with narcissists in their life because they're just like, you can come out on top with a narcissist. It's just, but there's a strategy to it. You can't like let them suck you into arguments, and you have to just be a broken record, and you have to just be like, well, that's not true. And also you have to make, like you said, like if you're buying into a narcissist's shit, then they like love you and they are affectionate to you and shower you with the gifts and stuff. But the second you're like, no, I'm not doing this, then they're malicious and vicious and cruel and super vengeful. But there's also like, if you establish yourself in a place of power where you're like, no, you want me to like you. And you see that happen with Trump where he'll be like, well, no, he'll be desperate for someone's approval that you're like, oh, weird that he didn't do this with like the 15 people before. But it's almost like a weird power position that you have to put yourself in. So
that's like, it really puts it at a disadvantage for women because it's never women.
No.
It has to be like, so the only people that can like deal with Trump are men because Trump doesn't care about women.
Yeah.
So that's why he could walk off in a huff from that 60 Minutes interview. But if that had been, I can't remember anybody's name from 60 Minutes. Any Bradley? Isn't there a guy named Mike Bradley or some shit?
Maybe, yeah.
Like if that had just been a male,
a straight
interviewer,
white male.
A straight white male interviewer, he probably wouldn't have walked off the interview.
No.
And that has nothing to do with Leslie Stahl. That has everything to do with Trump.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually better for the country because there's no amount of like he released all that footage on his own Facebook page and still looked like a bitch.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Check this out. They're going to try to spin this to make me look bad. And it's like, well, I mean, they don't have to spin it. Like any editing would have made you look better.
Yeah. 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 That was a wild interview.
But that's why he got flustered by the guy from Axios because there's a straight white male who kind of looks like Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
That's why he hates Justin Trudeau because people love Justin Trudeau. Mm-hmm. And he's a straight white male who has everything Trump wants. He's in charge of a country and all the people in that country like him.
Yeah. And he's handsome. He's
handsome.
And young. And I think that like more than anything, I think Trump is furious about getting older. Like you can see so much of what he does.
Is that why his face is so red?
Yeah. That might be the Coke. I don't know. But like, I think that that's an interesting thing. Like in Trump's world, there's no room for what he considers weakness, which is aging, which is like getting sick, which is having feelings, which is being compassionate. There's no room for any of that.
Watching what you eat.
Yeah, yeah.
Exercising, anything that might admit to a personal flaw that needs to be dealt with.
Well, and that personal flaw in the end is mortality. Everything he does is running from mortality, in my opinion. Like, the money and the power grabs and the like, even the like super creepy attraction to much younger women, all of it is just based in this like complete inability to be like, yes, no matter how rich I am, no matter how powerful, I get it old and I die. Like he just is incomplete. Even after COVID, when he was like, I feel 20 years younger. I'm like, well, you're not,
Right. It doesn't matter. You can take all the Regeneron you want. It's not you're not going to actually be 20 years younger. It's just exhibiting like it sucks when the treatment for COVID has symptoms and side effects that are just like enhanced versions of his already malignant personality.
Yeah.
Of like delusions of grandeur and feelings of like invincibility and whatever. And it's like, this is the drugs. And also this is also what you're like all the time.
Yeah. You're like someone who's been on steroids for 2 years all the time.
All the time. And yet aren't steroids supposed to kill you eventually?
God.
How long?
That's one thing that, death can be scary, but I feel like this can be this very comforting thing when you see someone like Trump where you're like, God, it's great that it gets us all though, isn't it? Where like, you're going down just like the rest of us. So,
Right.
you know what? Have 5 years, have 10 more years, whatever. You're going
Right.
down.
I'm not going to live forever, but at least he's not either.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good segue into our next question. Because I know you left your faith, and I know you're, not a Pentecostal, obviously, anymore. But what are your feelings on the afterlife? What do you feel like happens personally? Like, what do you think happens when we die? So
I think that I think that what happens is I kind of think that what happens is whatever you think is going to happen.
Oh, yeah?
Like, it's like, because there's like, you get all that DMT or whatever comes out. So maybe you just get locked into that. And that's like the last thing your consciousness is aware of. And so that's where your consciousness stays.
Ooh, yeah.
So it could be like, there's some, like, so there's no way that like Trump, like when he dies, he's probably going to think about how terrible he is.
You think so?
I think so. I don't think you could be like that and not come from insecurity. And I don't think that, I don't think that people like that know. Like, I don't think that he thinks he's good.
Mm. Yeah.
I think that he thinks, like, if you really got him on some truth serum or something, I think he knows he's fucking terrible. And that's why he's like, that's part of his insecurity is that, I mean, and it's like, there's some empathy there because one of the reasons he thinks he's terrible is because his dad made sure he thought he was terrible.
Yeah. I do have empathy for like the child Trump. Like you just picture the childhood he had to make him into this much of a monster. And you're like, that was bad. That was definitely a bad childhood, Although we both had bad childhoods and just became dorks, Like,
well, it's what you choose to. If it's whether or not you ever choose to acknowledge it and like look at it, and if you choose to look at it, then you can move. Then you can do something different, or you can at least attempt to, because it wasn't. 5 or 7 years ago or whatever, I was essentially like, I wasn't, everything that was like good about me was just a rebellion from my dad. It had nothing to do with like self-awareness or whatever. It was just a reaction to being different than him, which isn't that's not the right, that's not like how you become good. There was like, so I still had like, my like feelings about the world or whatever, and about large groups, like the population or whatever, those might have been, progressive and inclusive and whatever, but my like personal one-on-one relationships were pretty bad. So it was like weird. I was like, it's a strange dichotomy of like, groups in general, I was all for it, but I didn't know how to deal with any of my own anything. So I was a pretty terrible person to be around generally. I was an exhausting person to be around. I was probably pretty close to being a narcissist, like without, like just coming at it from a different angle of like, still like needing that from other people, not being able to generate any of it on my own. And then just like, it would drain people. But then, I did a lot of work about it and got, what was the question?
Well, I think like, so what, let's get back to like, what do you think Donald Trump thinks? So he never did the work that I think you and I both did, like we both were rough people in our 20s and 30s. And then as we got older, we're like, oh, I got to quit burning shit down. So we did a lot of work for either ourselves or other people or whatever you want to say it was. But like, Trump never did that work. So when he dies, do you think he'll realize kind of at the end, like, yeah, I am a piece of shit. And then what do you think his afterlife then? So he gets the DMT dump. What do you think? Like, does he create hell for himself?
Yeah, I think that's how you go to hell.
Wow.
That's because there's no, there's nothing in the Bible about people going to hell. There's nothing. It's just like hell was created for, like in the Bible, in the book where it comes from. There's nothing. The hell that everybody pictures and that like is talked about is from that book by Dante. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's not in the Bible. The Bible is where, like, that hell, that lake of fire was created for Lucifer and the other angels who turned and went with Lucifer. There's nothing that says that people are separated from God. That's their punishment, which sounds a lot like reincarnation. Mm-hmm. Like that could just be you're back here.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's also like anything that has to do with after you die is speculation. It's just guesswork. So I think that like when I say like Trump's going to create his own hell, it's because I think he knows, he thinks every day, like he's driven by the fact that he thinks he's terrible, that he thinks he's not, where like he needs all of the rallies and stuff because it's the only way that he can prove to himself that he's worth anything. And ultimately to other people is because of those people. He's got nothing on himself. And so when you die, you don't have that. So what you're left with is what you think you deserve and whether or not you tried to be good or not. I think that you just get like, it'd be like dreams. So you can see anyone you want, anyone you've heard of, anyone you've missed, anyone that's died. That all sounds a lot like how they describe heaven. You can see those who went before and whatever. And so it's just like, that could just be forever. It could be a dream day that it doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be, it just as long as it's like not a bad dream. I think that every day of the afterlife is like anything from a regular dream to a good dream, but not. And maybe, but also it might be nothing. I don't know. I just don't spend too much time thinking about the afterlife. As long as it's different.
Yeah.
than this.
Like you're not hoping to be reincarnated?
I hope that if you like, I feel like if you do get reincarnated, you get to, how there are people like when you're growing up, they just seem to like get it a little better than you do. Mm-hmm. Like it's not because they can remember their past lives, but I think that experience might carry over. So if there is reincarnation, I think that you'll be like every time you do, and every time you do, like you do this work or whatever, the next time, like you won't have to do this work. You'll be one of those people that like is like that. And then there's like other work you can do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like even in your own lifetime, I think, I have friends who are in their 30s who are just starting to like really get into the introspection and the self-awareness and the digging through and, sorting through their trauma. And they're like, oh, it's so hard. You have to go to therapy all the time and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah. And then one day you're 40 and you're like, oh, okay, I feel better. And now I can focus on like, I think I spent the last 5 years of my 30s really navel gazing and like digging deep and doing a bunch of work. And now I just am done with that. Like not forever, obviously. There's still work you do, but like you're able to turn your gaze outward and start kind of like addressing. So if you got 15 lifetimes, 100 infinite lifetimes, yeah, eventually maybe you get to that point.
Right. Like I think that maybe the difference will be like, as long as like if I get reincarnated and I just get to do the next one without immediately thinking I'm angry and then having to work back from that and to figure out what it really is, then that'll be fucking top notch. Yeah. I'll fucking kill it next time.
Yeah. I wonder. So if like, to me, I think like Donald Trump's personal hell, like maybe those people just repeat, like they just repeat the same kind of life over and over. Cause like, I don't feel like he's dying and like learning something at the end of his life. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, maybe at the last moment, and which I disagree with. I think he'll never have a moment of introspection. I think people like that spend their entire life running from reality, running from the reality of themselves, from the reality of their mortality. And even at the last moment, I just think they think, not me. That's what I think Donald Trump thinks.
Like they don't think that it's like whatever it is that they feel inside, they never figure out what it is. They never know that that's like insecurity or whatever. They never know that it's because it's like there's nothing. I mean, there's lots of that was hyperbolic. There's one of the things I hate a lot is when people talk about their like when they're like, "Oh, my dad used to do this," and whatever, and it's like, yeah, but like that's terrible.
Yeah,
like, whatever that is terrible. Just because you're different than that, until you acknowledge that was terrible, you're never going to be like free of it. You're just always going to use that as a bit like, so if this is normal, then how I behave, if it's better than that, must be good. But that wasn't good. That wasn't normal. That was terrible. So that's a lot further down. So just because you can clear that doesn't mean that you're up to good yet.
Yeah.
You could still be not even up to regular.
Yeah, I saw a comedian who I love, and who's been doing like a lot of big shit lately. Recently, they were saying they were in an interview and they were like, I hate the whole narrative that like comedians are traumatized and that's why we're funny. Like, I think that's bullshit. I think like I had a perfectly happy, normal childhood and, nothing bad ever happened to me. And I'm funny because I'm funny and I'm not going to let trauma, blah, 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 blah. And like, then the next question just goes on to like relate all this stuff that you're like, poverty, starvation, you were homeless as a child. Like all these things that you're like, these are huge triggers. Your dad abandoned your family. Your mom was on drugs and sounds like fairly abusive, but you've normalized that abuse. Like all these things where I'm like, well, just because you never acknowledge that that's trauma doesn't mean that you escaped it, Right.
And it does like, that's a person who's better off. I'd rather whoever that is just not say anything. Yeah. Because now there's other people who have gone through that who are now like, well, why am I so fucked up about it?
Yeah.
Well, because you should be. Because it was terrible.
Yeah.
Like this guy's just wrong.
Yeah. Well, so then when you die, let's say you go on a roller coaster later today and it goes backwards and it's not supposed to, and you smash into another car.
No way. My back can't handle being on a roller coaster that works.
So you die today. What do you think your afterlife would look like? So the afterlife of your making.
I think I would get to do. I don't know. I mean, I think it would just be good dreams. I think that one of the days I would get to fucking Thelma and Louise onto a flotilla of Trump boats with you driving. I think that, I mean, one of the dreams, check this out. One of the dreams I had was I was like at a festival and I was walking, like, this is interesting because it's like the people that I talked to at this festival and that I like spent time with one-on-one are people that I looked up to. It was like Mark Maron and Greg Proops, but it's also people that I've met and had conversations with. And the people that were at this festival that I've never met, I never talked to, but they were there. We went to Mark in this dream. Mark and I were trying to go. We ran into Greg Proops and he was going to see Eddie Izzard. And I was like, let's go. I want to go to this. So we went with Greg to get backstage. And then we watched it from the side of the stage, and it was Eddie Izzard doing his, it was the Definite Article special.
Oh, God.
So, like, I knew the jokes, but I was the only one that knew the jokes. And I was like, I think this is the Definite. Like, I knew which one it was. I knew, but I never talked to Eddie Izzard. I didn't meet him in the dream because I've never met him in real life. I've never had a conversation with him. So I couldn't. My brain couldn't recreate that, but my brain could recreate these other relationships. So I think that I think it could be something, it could be something like that. Like that was like a good dream. I was like it felt stressful because I was like nervous because I felt like I was going to meet Eddie Izzard, side stage, at backstage, whatever. But it just never, like that never happened because I couldn't make that work. But You know, if Sinbad was there, I would have had a conversation with Sinbad. I met him a couple times.
I love that you'd be nervous to meet Eddie Izzard. That's like,
He's the only one left.
yeah.
He's the only comedian that I haven't met that I really want to meet and would love to meet. And all the rest of them, like all the ones that were on that list, I either met them or they took themselves off that list.
Interesting.
Like 10 years ago, I would have loved to meet Louis, but
Yeah.
I could give a fuck. Like I'm not gonna get up. I'm not gonna get up at like if I saw him at a restaurant, I wouldn't cross the restaurant.
Yeah.
Like it would have to be like he would have to come over to where I was to talk to whoever I was with for me to be introduced to him.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like I don't want to, because I think about it and I try to explain. Like the easiest way I could explain it is until maybe 6 years ago, if what Louis was into was jerking off in front of dudes like me, it would have happened to me.
Yeah.
Because he could have got me. Like I would have gone with him. Like I would like.
Yeah.
I think of all the times that I like where you like kind of even just overstay because you're around somebody that's your hero.
Yeah. And you're just excited and you're like, holy fuck, I'm in this hotel room. Like that, you know, they're like, oh, do you want to come back and you just at the hotel room? I've got it. You can have a t-shirt or something. You're like, sure. You know, like, of course.
Yeah, we're going to hang out.
Yeah. Or like, let's go grab dinner. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. And then halfway through, I'm like, oh, this is a date?
Yeah, it's not. Like, oops. I thought you knew this was like a mentor relationship. Like
talk comedy. Sometimes it took me months to realize that, where I was like, oh, I thought you were interested in me professionally. I'm an idiot. But yeah. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And then people talk about, like, there's only been one person who was actually canceled, and that's Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone else still has their fucking job.
Yeah.
Everyone else still gets booked. Everyone else still sells albums. Everyone else's specials are still on Netflix. There's nothing, like, nobody has been canceled. What they're mad about is that their mentions got a little fucked up.
Yeah. Somebody was snotty to them. I didn't watch it, but I saw it popped into my feed that Sarah Silverman had done a whole thing on cancel culture and was like, you know, being Sarah Silverman about it. And it's just one of those where you're like, the only people who are worried about being canceled are people who know that they did blackface 15 years ago. Like, who have a reason to now be like, well, I think it's very stupid people are being canceled because I've been dating 15-year-old girls this whole time. You know, like people who have shit in their past are worried about it. The worst thing I think I have in my past, and I could be wrong, if anybody was to call me out on something I forgot, I think the worst thing I have in my past is one Halloween, Arthur went as, I think it was Calvin, went as Peter Pan, and he insisted that I went as Princess Tiger Lily. This was 12 years ago, maybe. And I just did the very lazy mom costume of like 2 lines of eyeshadow and a feather in my hair. And that sucks. Like, that's clearly like shitty appropriation and all that. But I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I would say it's appropriation. I don't necessarily think that because your intent wasn't like evil or to marginalize or whatever. I think that it's there
still
is
native blackface, though. You know, like I think that's native blackface for sure. You know, I mean, native face, I guess we would call it.
I think that it's like everybody's just being like a little reactionary. Like what you do with that now is you think about how different you are now than where you were then. That's it. You can't hold 12 years ago you to today's standards. Like, sure, it would have been nice for you to have been progressive enough to be like, well, I'm not going to do that, Calvin. I'll be like, whatever. I'll be
also, I'm not letting you watch Peter Pan is probably where we should have started with that.
Right. But there's like, so you watch like, so people are like, oh, can you still watch Old School or whatever? And there's like, so Old School is a movie where when I watch it now, I think like the last time I watched it, my main takeaway was how different a person I am now than I was 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. Do I think that people that like it or whatever should not. I think that if you like it and you don't think any of it is wrong, that says more about you than it does about the movie.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely some of that stuff is not appropriate. But when people go, oh yeah, that couldn't get made today. It's like, yeah, of course it couldn't get made today. Why would it get, why is that the fucking standard?
Yeah.
That it get made today. It's not going to be made today.
And that's
because
fine.
It was made 17 years ago. It would get made. They would make Old School today, but it would be different. First of all, I mean, let's just get to the fact that it wouldn't have fucking Snoop in it. It would have somebody. It would have J. Cole in it or somebody. Like it would have somebody current or not, or like Kid Cudi or whatever. Like it would have somebody from today.
Yeah.
Not somebody, because the Old School came out. Snoop had been around for 10 years. So that's it. Like now he's been around for 30. If you make Old School now and you put Snoop in it, you're just the movie should be about old guys who go to Vegas.
Yeah.
For one last fling because my pancreatic cancer is flaring up. Like it
I would watch that, by the way.
Right? You just wouldn't
Snoop
do
go
it.
to Vegas because you have cancer. 100% on board. Let's find the money.
Right? And you can make so you're mad about 3 jokes.
Yeah.
Like that's where you're gonna go to bat is like, I wish that people could still say, gay slurs as punchlines. Well, they were never punchlines. We just didn't know that. It was like a shock or, I mean, in Old School, Luke Wilson fucks a high schooler at the beginning.
That's right. I forgot that. Yeah, that's gross.
And that's not even like what the movie's about.
Yeah.
It's
He's
just
fucking a high schooler. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't know she's a high schooler. He finds out the next day, and then it turns out that, he knew she was young because they were like having this party at a college campus. Yeah. But now we're looking at, if you're 30 and she's 22 or whatever, it's not, there's no reason to think that there's going to be a future in that relationship.
No.
But like they just made it so that there's an extra like weird obstacle thing for him to, and it's his boss's daughter and she's a senior. She's about to graduate. Like for him to find out in that room or whatever. But it's just about where you land. Now you watch some of those Sandler movies and it's like, so I watched Big Daddy.
Yeah.
Like a month ago, it came on Netflix and you watch it and you're like, oh man, this is insane. This guy should go to jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you just don't think that when you're, I was 20 or whatever when that movie came out.
Yeah.
So it's not about using today's standards to judge old things. It's about using old things to judge where you are. And that's what I do. That's what I do with all of it. Like I don't really have any problems watching. There are some things that I just can't watch anymore because I just no longer find them funny. But like I'm 42, so I don't think Old School is funny.
Yeah.
But I'm also 12 years older than any of the characters in Old School were supposed to be.
That's true.
And they were supposed to be hilarious because they were acting young.
Yeah.
And it's already like whatever. If I acted like I was 10 years younger than I am, I'm still 32. I'm still older than they are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I'm still
true.
like, we get like a little drunk on Friday and spend all day Saturday like on the couch watching fucking sports, being like, oh, I don't feel good. I better order a pizza. Like that's this version of it. It's not for me. And I think it's all a good thing.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I'm hoping we're getting away from the whole complaining about cancel culture, since maybe now
we're not. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just maybe now it's proven itself that like no one's been canceled. Like in the beginning, you and I were sort of at the forefront of all this comedy shit, being like, hey, it's not okay. None of this is okay. And we were like refusing to work with people from the very beginning and like calling people out and being very vocal. And people were real vitriolic towards us and like, you're just ruining these guys' careers. But now maybe we're far enough into it where it's like, Brian Callen's Patreon is up to $20,000 a month. Nobody's getting canceled,
it's not about
a real thing.
It's not about affecting his career. It's not about ruining Brian Callen's career. It's saving someone's $30 who might have gone to see a show.
Yeah.
Or who didn't know better.
And saving, it's also saving maybe the young woman comic who who is so much funnier than Brian, who quits forever because he's gross to her on a patio, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this."
Right? It's the same reason why all the stories about Louis stop in 2006. They go up until 2006 because after that, everybody knew it. Like all the comics knew it.
Everybody.
So they just told him, there was no like bringing him down or whatever, but there was like, hey, don't go to his hotel room and don't bring him to yours.
Or don't even be in the green room.
This is going to happen.
I was warned, if he books you, do not ever even share a green room with him. Stay out in the audience. Don't even share a green room with him. That's what I was told.
Right. And that's how that's what it's about. It's not about, like, if people want to go see Brian Callen, they should at least know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what they're mad about, is that, now people know what kind of person I am.
Exactly.
It's like, it's not going to affect, it doesn't matter.
A lot of times those guys will find me, if I say something about Brian Callen or any one of those guys, they'll find me and they'll be like, I'm almost sort of grateful that like the shit is out and that they've outed themselves as being like, I don't care if someone is a rapist, I'm going to support their comedy. I'm like, good. Then I know to avoid you forever and to never like, to never like try to get your dollar or try to get your try to have fun with you or let you be part of what I'm doing, because that's not what I'm about, like, so cool.
Right?
Thanks for letting me know. And they're mad about that.
Think about it this way. If I ended up going like, we're also helping Brian Callen. We're cutting down on the odds that somebody walks out of his show. We're cutting down on the odds that somebody else, hey, fuck you, from the crowd.
Yeah.
Like, you got like, your he people, doesn't want Brian. Those people there.
Yeah, you got your people. We've got ours, and
everybody gets the audience they deserve.
You've always
it might go real big, and then it starts to get a little smaller, but you end up with the one you deserve. Mm-hmm. So, like, now whoever goes to see Louis, that's the audience he deserves. It's pretty big. It's bigger than I'm comfortable with. Like, it's shocking, or it would be. Like, if this was 2014, it would be shocking that it was this big. But now it's like, this probably helped overall. There's probably people. Sure, his audiences are terrible, but they're bigger.
They're bigger because I think that there were men who weren't fans of his comedy, but who are big fans of sexual assault and of not facing consequences for sexual assault. I think a lot of people are mad because their comedy really was like this last bastion of like, you can get away with anything. That guys like that in the fan club kind of like, they wanted to live like that, but they work for HP and they have an HR and they have rules and a wife who would kick their ass if she found out they were talking to women like that. And they're, like they have rules around their life. So they loved that comedians were living like, this life outside of society and getting to do whatever they want and treat women however they wanted. And when they see those men face consequences, it's like themselves having to face consequences. It's like, no, I want this pocket to exist.
Oh, like when Callen cried on his podcast after D'Elia got outed, and you're like, okay, these aren't real. Yeah. This is because you know what's about to happen.
Yeah, you see the hammer dropping on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big hammer. It just it got one down, and now it's coming. It's going to hit somebody else next, and eventually it's going to come for you. They're all getting booked now because the people the clubs that need. The people that go to those shows, they have to book those comics because they need people who are used to not believing what they read.
Yeah.
And so if they read the internet and they go, well, this guy's a rapist, and also if I go to a comedy club, I could die.
Yeah.
They're less likely to go. But now they're like, well, whatever. The internet said this guy was a rapist, so
probably fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a lie. So all this other stuff, I'm going. I'm not even going to wear a mask.
Nobody can tell me what to do. I feel like Will Sasso owes us a fruit basket because that time that he was on our show in LA at the Comedy Store, and then that was the time Brian was gross to me on the patio. And then remember we were driving back with Will and we were both like, dude, Chris and Brian are gross. Then he was like, what? Yeah. No, they're not. And I'm like, we were both like, yeah, dude, they're fucking gross people. They're bad people. And he was like, I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that. And it took like, for me, because we took months more of being like, for reals, which now I'm kind of like, either you knew or you were willfully oblivious, because those guys are pretty obvious about what they are. But still, he stopped the podcast with them and separated ties. And I'm like, I feel like Geoff Tate and I should get a fruit basket out of that.
Well, it's easy. It's easy to be oblivious.
Yeah.
It's like for sure that's easier than not being oblivious. And when you're somebody like I could see Will Sasso like actually not knowing because he didn't react great on the patio either.
No.
And that was like, that might have been like, he also didn't react like he's used to it. Like it might have been a situation where he's like, it just generally happens. Like all it has to do is happen not within earshot.
Well, and I think Will is one of those people who was, he's one of those men who was mostly surrounded by men. Like he does have women friends too, but like he was mostly, you know, that there's like these pockets in LA of like bros who only hang out with their bros. And some of those bros are bad bros, but they maybe don't know that because they don't have enough women in their life being like, that guy sucks, you know? And so it's easy to be like, all my guys, they're all the good guys, when you have no outside female voice being like, that guy has a terrible reputation, actually, you know? So
also, let's go back to, just for one quick second, I've never found there to be any topic I haven't been able to make jokes about. I personally haven't found any because the jokes I make aren't bad.
Yeah.
So like when people go, oh, you can't say anything anymore. It's like, well, you can say whatever you want. It's what you're saying about it that people react to. It's not the word. You act like it's like, people act like it's the word. And if your joke is pro-rape, people are going to be upset about it.
Yeah.
It's not because, oh, you can't say rape. Did you hear any of the other words that went into that joke? That's what the problem is. It's just like, what are you doing? Do you take any responsibility with what you're saying and what you're like, what it is you're putting out there? And the answer is no. That's like, the people that are reacting like this is because they don't want to take any responsibility for what they're saying or what they're putting out there. And there's no, like, I've said like on paper, like if you just take specific words, I've said all the words probably, but it's how or what I'm that keeps me from being, from having 1,000 emails about it, or people on Twitter, people like passing around clips because, you know, because it might be about race, but it isn't racist. It might be about, something that's politically incorrect or whatever, but it's not, I'm not fighting for yesterday's battles or whatever.
Yeah. And I think the big difference is like, if somebody came to me and said, or you, and said, hey, that joke you do, I'm a part of that marginalized group and I'm telling you it's racist, you know, like, if you make, like we were sharing that clip the other day, if you make a feather or dot joke, which is super hack and offensive, but if an Indian person, Native American or Eastern Indian, comes to you and is like, that joke sucks and here's how it's harmed me, if you're like, I don't give a shit, you're a bad comedian, you're a bad person. If you're just like, I don't care how that's harmed you, I don't care how that fucks with your humanity, then that sucks. But if you're like, oh, okay, I can take that same joke and fix it and still do it. I think that there's this idea in comedy that you have to be above, like that all criticism is bad. And it's because we're all like these fucked up little kids who, like, is the second that you call anybody out on anything, like completely explode like little volcanoes, instead of being able to like see that like criticism, you're an artist. Art critics are going to be there. People can criticize your art. What you do is very public. And I think the difference between a podcaster like Joe Rogan or Brian Callen or Chris D'Elia and a comedian is that a comedian is careful with their words. And so if they are like, if you hear, you know, if criticism gets back to you, you get feedback from the audience all the time as a comedian. So you're always adjusting jokes. You're always tinkering with stuff. You're like, that didn't land. That made them uncomfortable. You're always going for something. Whereas a podcaster, it's just the quantity of words. podcasters can't keep track of how much dumb shit they've said because they're just constantly. It's part of the reason I fought having a podcast for so long is I was like, no, I've always been a writer and I've always been careful with my words and what I say matters to me. And so podcasting always made me nervous because I don't like just like blah, 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 blahing. But now I'm finally old enough and like settled in myself enough. I know that if something comes out of my mouth, I probably believe it. You know, like I can stand by it.
No, that's good. That's good. I definitely agree with that. Like when I was 25, I would have said things just to be funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't, I definitely know, it's not that I know better than to do that now. It's that being funny isn't the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
I can be funny with things I believe in.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that. Like I had a conversation, like I've had conversations with comedians and just in general, it's like these things you're fighting for, people are like, they're fighting over words that have been removed from the lexicon during their tenure. It's just the ones that are during their tenure. People are like, oh, there's words you can't say. Well, there was words you couldn't say when you started and you've never said them and you know why. And you don't like, it's one of the reasons why I respect, like when Stanhope says it, I believe him that that's what he thinks because there has never been anything he wouldn't say. Mm-hmm. I would never do it, but he's at least consistent. He's ideologically consistent.
Stanhope also accepts the consequences. I think that's
the other thing.
Like Stanhope is like, I'm going to live outside of societal norms. I'm going to say these things. I stand by a lot of this that I believe in it, but he also is willing to, he calls himself an unbookable because of it. Like he understands the consequences of it.
His bit about it is about, well then like the crux of his bit, like the bit he did about cancel culture, whatever, political correctness or not being able to say certain words was the crux of it was, well, then just don't be my fan. Yeah. Just like, you're the one that came to my show. You don't have to come to my show. And that's the problem that's the difference between him and all the other comics is all the other comics are like, you should still come to my show.
They're like, you're wrong for thinking this. You have to still like me. Yeah. And it's like, that's what cancel culture is being like, I get to say whatever I want and you still have to like me.
Right. When I say it, it's different for, but we like you all like everybody accepts the consequences and I accept the consequence. It was like that show. All right. You remember you were at that show where my dad lost his mind. That was the last time he came to a show.
Fuck. That was
right.
I forgot about that. And that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. That was the crux of what I told him was he was like, I was trying to keep you from losing fans. And I was like, the crux of what I told him was I accept. Like, I know that. Mm-hmm. I want that responsibility. I don't want those people as fans. Yeah. Like, I know what I'm saying and I know the consequences of what I'm saying and I'm willing to accept them. Not only am I willing to accept them, I embrace them. I'm actually hoping for them. I'm hoping that people who love Trump hear this and go, fuck this guy. I will never go to a show. Because from then on, my shows get easier. Yeah. Yeah.
Because then I can talk about, then I talk about whatever I want to talk. It's the same thing with everything. You talk about whatever you want to talk about. And if somebody doesn't like one of them enough to never come again, that's good.
Yeah.
And if what you want is a bunch of people that think it's cool to still, say the F word and the R word, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a whole room full of people who think that's okay. And that's fine. That's your room. I'd rather I know where they are than have them end up at my but they can come to my show and they're just never going to hear it. And if not hearing it bums them out enough that they don't ever want to come to a show again, that's also fine. But you have to accept that if I don't want to hear it and you say it, I get to not come to the show. That's what I get to do. You don't get to demand I still come to your show.
Yeah.
Without me being able to ask for concessions in return.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reality is the rest of us have been dealing with cancel culture this entire time. You know, like that time that we went on, what's his name's radio show.
Oh, yeah, Sam Roberts.
Sam's radio show. And then before we were even done with the interview, they were like, don't check Twitter for a while, you know, like.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with that. And for because we've been saying shit, you know, that people didn't want to hear
what
forever.
Did we say? What did we say on that show? All I said was, it's not. Nobody went after his freedom of speech. He was not put in jail.
Yeah.
All he did was get fired. And getting fired is a consequence everyone accepts with their actions. There are some, like when I work at Burger King, I can do whatever I want at Times Square at midnight, and Burger King ain't going to say anything because Burger King don't care. But if I'm on a show and Burger King is a sponsor or whatever, if I'm out there in my Burger King uniform doing that at midnight, that's going to have consequences. I might get fired.
Yep.
All he did was get fired. He didn't go to jail. He didn't even get punched. He just got fired.
Yeah.
And that is, and you know, I kind of feel like doing that now would have a slightly less of a reaction than then. Like 5 years ago. Yeah. That was a harder sell.
Yeah. 5 years ago, us sitting on that show and, you know, when they asked if we cared, if he got fired, we were like, no, fuck him. Like we were both glad he got fired.
Yeah,
that was such a huge deal. And now I don't think it's like the people now who went to bat for him so hard then have really outed themselves. Like back there, the middle back then was kind of supporting those people who were like mad at us. But now the middle is like, oh, those guys were always Nazis, just like you were saying. And, you know, the people supporting whichever one it was.
Well, I think Rogan is going to learn that he was better off not having a boss. Because now it's like Spotify, like now there's a parent company.
Yep.
And there's somebody to boycott. There's someone to unsubscribe from.
Yep.
It's the same thing with anything. Like Tucker Carlson says what he says, and then now the only people that advertise is the MyPillow guy and other Fox shows.
Yep.
They brag about it. Like they released the thing, like Fox News. They're like Tucker Carlson just had the biggest month in like cable news history. But what difference does it make?
Yeah.
Nobody advertises on Tucker Carlson. Like, so 5.5 million people watch his show every night. That's a disgustingly high number. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I bet Jimmy Kimmel with his 1.1 million makes more money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because why would people still advertise on Jimmy Kimmel? There's Tucker Carlson it's just ads for other Fox shows. Essentially, that's the only thing that's still left on like his show and Hannity's show, and the shows on the weekends like Janine Pirro show and stuff. Fucking nobody, the Dr. Laura shit, nobody advertises on that shit anymore. So it doesn't even matter. Like, and that's what that's all it was. Like that's why Kumia got fired was because advertisers were leaving. Because advertisers don't want to be associated with a guy like that. So don't be mad at me. I didn't, you know, he didn't get arrested. What I said was true.
That was funny. That was such a funny thing too, because like those of us who had known Kumia for a long time, we were like, yeah, the guy's a Nazi. The guy's a fucking white supremacist, you know, misogynist piece of shit. And when he got fired, people were like, people who knew him a little bit from the show, who either agreed with him or just didn't know very well, were like, "Wow, how dare you call him that? How dare you say that?" And it was like, no, a lot of us had known for a long time. Now people have started to be like, "Oh my God, they're everywhere." But I feel like a lot of us have been like, "Hey, this guy has a radio show. This is a bad idea to give these guys huge platforms where they're indoctrinating other, angry men and making this all like very kosher." To be this
also
racist.
We didn't bring it up.
No, they asked us. I know. Later, I kind of realized the next time I was in New York, I had thought about going back on because Sam was like, come back. And I was like, it's not worth the headache. Like, why would I come on the show? I know you're going to ask me a bunch of questions that will get your fans riled up, but that I will deal with the consequences for. Like, they didn't publicly like come to bat for either one of us. They didn't say like, hey, you guys leave them alone. Like, they kind of like kicked the hornet's nest and handed it to us, and then took off. And I was like, I'm not gonna help you generate clicks and views and listens and shit, but where I deal with the death threats, and you guys just get the revenue. Because it's not like that pays. Right. That's not worth it for me. Why would I bother? I didn't get any fans from it.
It's like the same reason I stopped doing Bob and Tom. Like, I'm not really going to win anybody over. And there's people that listen aren't like, there wasn't anybody that like, my mentions were a wreck for like a week, and there wasn't anybody that was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah,
like, I was right.
I had
Like, so what?
I was like, had a show and they wanted me to go on, and I was like, nope. And they were really annoyed with me for not promoting it for them on Bob and Tom. And I was like, I don't do Bob and Tom. And they were like so pissed. And I was like, nobody who hears me on that show is going to come see me do comedy. Like, it's not like nobody.
If they do, they're going to be mad.
They're going to just come to like heckle me and be assholes, you know? It's not going to be fun for anybody.
Right. It would be like, I got to spend the next month shaking loose these 500 new Twitter followers. I'm just going to get yelled at over and over until they finally leave.
Or they'll just go through all my YouTube videos and downvote everything and leave comments about what a bitch I am. And, you know, it's like...
They don't do that to me because I'm a dude.
Yeah, they do it to me. They will follow me to the ends of hell to tell me how much they hate me. They will leave comments on my TripAdvisor reviews that we used to have to do for those free rooms. I get comments on those like, you're a cunt. And I'm like, I left this in 2015. Well, let me ask you the third.
You should see me now.
Yeah.
I'm like, all four of those letters are capitalized. I'm a weaponized cunt at this point.
Oh, thank you, honey. I'm glad you noticed. Well, let me ask you the third question, because I know you got to get going. You said you're going somewhere soon. You got a hot date.
Oh yeah, shit.
You got a hot roller coaster date. So the third question is, I've been reading Ray Bradbury's book, Zen and the Art of Writing, which you would love. It's really, really good. And in the beginning of it, he talks about, and it's just something the third question I ask is always just something that's kind of been knocking around in my head that I like want to hear from you about. But in the very beginning, he talks about how in your work, in your artistic work, you have to have zest and gusto and hunger and appetite. And it's I can't stop thinking about it because I think that honestly, this is the first time in my life where not just for my work, but in general, I have no zest or a gusto or appetite or hunger. Because like, what would you have it for? Like all the things I used to love to do are gone. All the things for my work that I used to be able to get passionate about and get excited about are gone. So like, where are you right now finding zest and gusto in your professional and like in your artistic life, in comedy or any at all, if you're finding it at all?
I mean, I still like, it's really fortunate for me that one of the things that I've always liked to do is watch movies. And now I can do that at a greater rate than ever before. Like I can't go to the movies, which is a real bummer, but I just like, that's the thing that like, when I find when one does come out and I'm real fucking jazzed about it, that's fun. Like I rented a theater to see Tenet.
Oh, cute! I love that.
It came out like right around Troy's birthday, and so I invited some of his friends. Like there are people that I know that like I know that they take it seriously, and that this is like these are the only people we're ever around. We go to jobs, but then like our personal life. Like our social life, it's just these people. It's a couple of people that there was a guy that I've known since the 8th grade that we hadn't really hung out in a while, but we were like we recently started spending more time together. He was like me and him and Jeff Vanover. We were all in like the same Sunday school class together, and I see Jeff all the time and never stopped from the last 30 years or whatever, but this guy Ben, Jeff had a real health scare earlier this year. He had a torn aorta.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It's the numbers on it are crazy.
We should have him on the podcast.
75% of the people this happens to don't make it to the hospital.
Wow.
And 90% of the ones who do make it to the hospital don't make it through surgery.
Wow.
So he's like, it's like 2 out of 100 people make it. And he made it. And so like that got like, so Ben found out about that, hit up Jeff, and then Jeff told me about that. And so then I hit up Ben, and then now we have like every other week we'll go sit on Jeff's porch because Ben just goes to work and then goes home. He's not really doing anything. So like I hadn't seen him in years, 10 years maybe. And then now it's like 4 times in the last 3 weeks. And then And then the other people, like, we're having a Halloween party today, but it's just 8 people in a huge room watching Beetlejuice on a wall.
Oh, nice.
And it's the same people. Like, there's not going to be anybody new. There's not going to be somebody I haven't seen in a long time there. It's just going to be the same other people.
So friendship, you have zest and gusto for friendships right now?
I guess, because that's the only thing. That's the only thing you can have. You got to find something that's also everything that there is to do is free because everything there is to do is outside.
Yeah.
So I just go like I've had to pay to park 3 times or whatever to go hiking, and then the rest of the time, even that's free. So I just go like I hike in the woods. I didn't know about all these trails. Cincinnati has a lot of trails. I do about, let's see, the last 2 months, I get about 100 miles a month.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's really fun. But as far as like anything work related goes, nothing. I got nothing. I got no zest or gusto or hunger or appetite. I just want to watch movies and go hiking and not get fucking COVID.
I mean, haven't we earned that in a way?
To not get COVID?
Well,
yeah.
no,
I've done all
like,
the things.
But like, because like that's something, it's funny because I think somebody was mad at me the other day because I had said that like, honestly, for me, I've appreciated the break from the road in a big way. And I feel like you and I have kind of earned maybe just like having zest and gusto for seeing some friends. Like it's really hard to maintain friendships when you're on the road as much as we were, because like when everybody's doing stuff, you're gone a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice to just be home and like see people in my life. Like I've seen my parents every week, and it's been so nice to just actually like see the people in my life and like be home and not, and also like the road kind of runs you ragged enough that I think you're a little dissociated. Like even when you're home, you're a little like out of it, you know? So I feel like, haven't we earned that just to watch movies and hike for a while, you know? Like maybe that's fine to just only have zest and gusto for like living a normal person existence, even though it's not normal at all right now, but kind of feels that way.
Right. That's the thing that's a real, I try not to think about why this is happening.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, I would still rather like, because at some point I'm going to have to figure out the correct, like better balance. Like it can't be all of one thing and then all of one thing and then all of one. Like I can't go back to it being all of that other thing again.
Yeah.
So whenever it does go back, and I will say I've done a couple of shows. I did a couple of sets outside, and I did one inside that was supposed to be outside, but it started raining, and so I did it inside, and I just was like, I was outside until it was my turn, and I was like way down the list, and I was like, come on, can I go third? I'm getting out of here. Like, there's too many people. I don't want to. And then as soon as I got on stage, like, there's like there's that part of me that's like, oh, I haven't done this in a while. Am I like, how is it going to go? What if the crowd isn't good? What if then the guy that goes before me doesn't do that well? And it's like, oh, is that because of the crowd? What, like all of that stuff. And then it's like, oh, one sentence in, you're like, oh no, I know how to do this. And it's like, so those minutes were, you know, just incredible. But so it's like when I do stand up, I have all of those things for those few minutes.
Yeah.
I don't have any of it like leading up to it. And then after, it's just a nightmare of anxiety for the next 5 days. Like, why did I cough? Am I hot? Is it hot in here?
Yeah. I mean,
it is hot in here. Okay. So it's not inside. Okay. So, right. I sneezed earlier, but I was cleaning. So maybe it's the dust.
Well, maybe that's something to have like gusto or hunger for, is like, we both had maybe hit a place in our careers where like I hadn't been nervous in a really long time. And I think that when I finally go back to doing comedy, I'll have some of that, like you said, like the jitters as you're going up of being like, can I still do this? You know? And so maybe it'll make you feel fresh again. It'll make you feel green, you know?
I'm all in my head about it. And then I realize I'm like 3 sentences in. I haven't done, or like 3 jokes in, and I'm somehow like I'm riffing on what was just done, and I don't even really know what was just done. I only like I might have caught the last sentence and then just like guessed at what happened by the vibe in the room.
Yeah.
And then just, but it's like all of those. It does feel good that this is happening now, 17 years in, instead of 5 or whatever, because I feel like a lot of the stuff is like I have it. Like I'm gonna have to, like I would have to not do this for like 3 years.
Yeah.
To really lose any of my hard-earned skill set.
Yeah. I would give you 5. I would imagine you could go 5 years, get up, and be just as funny. You'll be fine. Well, let's do our last question. I know you got to get going, so I'm going to ask your last. It's the themed question for Halloween. Even though your episode's going to go up after Halloween, but it's Halloween today.
Ooh, spooky! It's a time traveling episode.
It is. I guess I could ask you a November question, but November seems very boring, so I'd rather ask you a Halloween spooky question. What was your favorite Halloween costume ever that you did?
Well, this is going to come as no surprise, but I was never really allowed to do Halloween.
Oh, yeah, huh?
So I've never really been good at it. I've never spent money on a good costume because it's, you can't wear a fucking Chewbacca suit the rest of the week or the rest of the month or the rest of the fucking year. It's just a thing. And then also if you do it, then you're just going to be that forever. There's no, I'm not going to buy another one next year. That one was $400
now. Yeah.
Right. So I got, it's really just what can I piece together from around the house. So it's a lot of, I remember one time I was Luke Skywalker, but it was one of those like with the rubber band plastic face, like mask things. And then the outfit that came with it was just like a poncho with a bunch of different pictures from the movie. It wasn't like it wasn't like, oh, this is the shirt Luke wears. Yeah. It was just a bunch of different pictures of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
In case you couldn't recognize the mask, which you wouldn't have been able to. No. It looked more like the face of a toy than the face of the person.
Yeah.
But so I remember that one, so I'm going to say that one. That time I was Luke Skywalker and I was like 5.
I like that. I like it. We did a Halloween. It wasn't on Halloween, but it was like the weekend, We did a Halloween show and we dressed up, but I can't remember for the life of me what we dressed up as. Or what city that was or what year. I just remember doing a Halloween show with you last minute, then being like, don't forget your costume. And we were like in the hotel room, we were like, fuck. So we came up with a costume super fast.
I'm much more a fan of just putting together my clothes in a way that I don't ordinarily do, and then being like, oh, I'm Chandler.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, because you got khakis and a fucking dumb shirt. All right.
What are you dressing as today? Do you have a costume today?
This will come as no surprise. I bought a cowboy outfit in Tombstone a long time ago. The first time I went to Bisbee, we went to Tombstone for a day, and so I bought this cowboy outfit. My ultimate plan then was to put that outfit on and then go to the OK Corral place where they staged the shootout, and then like a historical play or whatever. They did it like once an hour, and I wanted to go there. And then right before it starts, pretend I'm the narrator, and then just get in front of the people and then just describe the movie Tombstone.
Oh my God!
That's the only thing I knew about it, and that's really the only thing they knew about it too, because every store you went in had cowboy clothes, and then also Tombstone DVDs and posters. Just everywhere, Tombstone DVDs and posters, and but we didn't. I couldn't put it on. And so I have this pant vest combo that I need to get suspenders for. And then I'm going to wear that with like an overcoat. And it's all because we're all dressing like cowboys. So the masks make sense. So we can all wear masks and it still feel like a Halloween costume and not like a fucking COVID party.
Yeah. You should send me a picture of that so I can use it as the cover for the podcast.
All right, I'll do that.
Well, thank you for being on my podcast, Geoff. It was my
pleasure.
It was so good to see you.
Well, we're gonna get I'll overstay my welcome because I guess I'm gonna see you on Wednesday too. Because we're both doing Cubist thing on Wednesday.
Oh, you're doing that with me? Yay! Yeah. Oh, that's going to be so fun.
I didn't know that it was with you. And he didn't say that it was with you. He like sent me, he was like, you can do it this day or this day. And I was like, well, this one is next.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have anything to do on Wednesdays ever. And he was like, oh, cool. Emma's going to be on it.
Yay. I didn't know you were on it either. That's so fun. Good. That'll be good because I'm interviewing him next Thursday. And I was like, boy, that's back-to-back Cubist. I hope it's not weird. Like we're both like, hey again, hello. Not that you could ever get enough of Cubist, but well, thank you. You were a wonderful guest, and I love your ideas about the afterlife, and I hope you have fun at your party today.
Yeah, well, it was great to see you, and I will see you, in a couple of days.
Okay, I'll see you in a couple of days. Love you. Love Higgs and Mitch. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of What's Next. Join us next time. We will have a guest, either Dave Ross or Chris Cubis or Ann McDonald. We have a bunch of people coming up in the shoot. I'm interviewing 5 people next week, so we're doing a lot of things. Anyway, I'm glad we're doing this. This is fun. Okay, bye-bye.